Have you ever poured the entirety of your being into something, only to watch it drain away without a trace? Have you ever offered your time, your energy, your truth, making yourself endlessly available, thinking that your constant presence was the very glue holding it all together? We live in a world that screams at us to be more, to do more, to show up more, to scream louder in a crowded room just to be heard. We tie our worth to our visibility, believing that if we are just present enough, just useful enough, just accommodating enough, then we will be seen, then we will be valued, then we will be loved. But what if the opposite is true? What if the most powerful statement you will ever make is not with your presence, but with your absence? This isn't about games, this isn't about manipulation, this is about the ancient, silent language of self-respect, a language that, when spoken through the simple, profound act of walking away, the world has no choice but to finally listen. We are conditioned from a very young age to equate our visibility with our value, to believe that our constant presence is the very proof of our commitment and care. We fear that if we step back, even for a moment, we will be forgotten, replaced, or deemed irrelevant. This anxiety fuels a desperate need to be perpetually available, to respond instantly to every message, to attend every gathering, to insert ourselves into every conversation, believing that this omnipresence is the glue that holds our relationships and our social standing together. We operate under the grand illusion that by making ourselves endlessly accessible, we are building unshakable bonds and demonstrating our indispensability. Yet, this is a fragile construct, built on the exhausting premise that we must perform our loyalty continuously, mistaking sheer volume of interaction for genuine depth of connection. This fear of disappearing is not just social, it is deeply primal, rooted in the terror of being ostracized from the tribe, a death sentence in our ancient past. We have simply traded the physical tribe for the digital one, but the underlying panic remains identical, the dread of being left behind, unseen and unheard. In a world that never stops making noise, we become like a constant, ambient sound in a room. Eventually, those in the room will stop hearing it altogether, not because it's gone, but because its persistent presence has rendered it invisible to the conscious ear. We become background noise in the lives of others, confusing our constant hum for a melody they actively choose to listen to. This compulsive need for presence is a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology and the nature of desire itself. The principle of scarcity is one of the most powerful forces governing human perception. We are neurologically wired to assign greater value to that which is less available, that which requires effort to obtain. This isn't a cynical modern invention. It is an observation of a timeless pattern of behavior. The philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli, often misconstrued as purely malevolent, was ultimately a stark realist who understood the mechanics of power and respect. He observed that men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. While harsh, this points to an uncomfortable truth. People are drawn to what fulfills an immediate need, and a constant, unwavering presence creates no need, no longing, and no urgency. Your perpetual availability signals that you have nothing more important to attend to, that your time and energy are low-cost commodities, readily on offer, without any requirement for reciprocity. It communicates that your own world is not rich or demanding enough to require your full attention, and thus you can always be on call for the worlds of others. This doesn't make people inherently bad, it makes them human. We are all subconsciously assessing the value of things based on their perceived rarity. By making yourself a limitless resource, you inadvertently instruct others on how to treat you, as something common and without exceptional worth. This dynamic corrupts the very essence of true connection, which must be built on mutual investment, not unilateral expenditure. Emotional maturity is the ability to see this economy of attention clearly and to refuse to participate in your own devaluation. It is the recognition that your energy, your focus, and your time are not infinite resources to be spent frivolously on those who see them as an entitlement rather than a gift. Maturity is understanding that respect is not given. It is earned through the establishment of boundaries that teach people what you will and will not accept. When you are always there, you remove any necessity for another person to earn your time, to cherish your attention, or to contemplate your absence. You absolve them of any responsibility in the relationship, becoming the sole keeper of its flame until you inevitably burn out. This is not loyalty. It is self-betrayal disguised as devotion. It is the sacrifice of your sovereignty on the altar of someone else's convenience, and it is a transaction where you are the only one paying a price. The emotionally mature individual knows that a healthy relationship is an oscillating rhythm of presence and absence, of coming together and pulling apart, because it is in the space between that appreciation grows and individuation is maintained. Our modern culture, with its cult of hustle and hyperconnectivity, actively worships this misconception of presence. We wear our busyness as a badge of honor and our constant digital availability as proof of our relevance. Social media platforms are engineered to reward perpetual engagement, creating a dopamine-driven loop where we post, wait for validation, and post again, fearing that silence will be interpreted as irrelevance or failure. We are terrified of the void, of the digital silence, so we fill every second with content, with updates, with messages screaming into the universe, "I am here, see me." But this desperate performance creates a paradox. The more we try to prove our value through constant visibility, the less valuable we actually become. We become predictable, oversaturated, and ultimately easy to ignore. The law of diminishing returns applies starkly to our social capital. The more of yourself you give away for free, the less anyone feels compelled to invest in you. The world rewards focused value, not frantic visibility. It respects the person who is selective with their presence, because that selectivity implies a rich inner world and priorities that extend beyond the approval of the crowd. This fear-driven performance extends deeply into our personal relationships, where we often mistake obsession for passion and suffocation for love. We believe that loving someone means merging with them, becoming enmeshed, and erasing all boundaries in a grand gesture of total availability. We answer calls at any hour, drop our plans at a moment's notice, and prioritize their needs so consistently that we lose all sight of our own. We call this dedication, but it is often a deep-seated insecurity masquerading as affection. We are trying to control the outcome of the relationship through the sheer force of our presence, thinking that if we can just be enough, present enough, helpful enough, accommodating enough, we can secure the love and loyalty we crave. But this is a catastrophic error. Love cannot be commanded or cornered through constant attendance. It can only be freely given in the space between two whole individuals. This kind of smothering presence does not inspire deeper love. It inspires resentment, restlessness, and often retreat. The other person feels the weight of your unmet expectations and your silent demands, and the relationship becomes a cage instead of a garden. The most damaging aspect of this misconception is the profound erosion of self that occurs when we outsource our worth to the attention of others. When your value is contingent on your visibility in someone else's life, you hand them the remote control to your entire emotional world. Their acknowledgement becomes your validation, their attention becomes your oxygen, and their indifference becomes your annihilation. You become a prisoner to their whims, constantly checking for signs of their approval, tailoring your actions to maintain your position in their spotlight. This creates a fragile, anxious existence where you are no longer the author of your own story, but a supporting actor in theirs, forever waiting for your cue. Your identity becomes contingent, defined by your utility to others rather than your intrinsic qualities. You forget what you enjoy, what you think, and who you are when no one is watching, because you are never alone. You are perpetually performing, even for an audience of one. This is the ultimate cost of the misconception of presence, not just their potential disrespect, but your certain self-abandonment. Therefore, the path to reclaiming respect does not lie in doubling down on your visibility, in shouting louder or clinging tighter. That path only leads deeper into the trap. The power begins to shift, not through a more aggressive presence, but through the courageous, counterintuitive act of strategic absence. This is not about playing games or employing manipulative tactics. It is about a fundamental recalibration of your own worth. It is about withdrawing your constant energy, not to punish others, but to rescue yourself. It is about creating a vacuum, a silence where your once ubiquitous presence used to be. In that space, something crucial happens. You are forced to confront yourself, and others are forced to confront your absence. They may not miss you immediately, and they may never miss you at all. But that is no longer the point. The point is that you begin to miss yourself, and in that longing, you start the journey back to the person you were before you decided that being seen by others was more important than being known by yourself. The moment of realization rarely arrives with fanfare or drama. It seeps in through the cracks of your composure during a perfectly ordinary instant. You might be staring at your phone, watching the screen darken for the 10th time that hour, willing a notification to appear from someone who has grown accustomed to your silence being the thing that breaks first. Or you might be in the middle of a conversation, expertly tailoring your stories and opinions to align with theirs, when a sudden, quiet voice in your head asks, "Who am I even talking to right now?" It's a subtle but seismic shift, a hairline fracture in the foundation of a relationship you believed was solid. This isn't the explosive anger of a fight. It's the chilling calm that comes after, a profound and unsettling clarity that what you have been participating in is not a partnership, but a performance, where you are the only one who showed up to rehearsal. You see the entire history of the interaction in a new, unforgiving light. The rescheduled plans that were always on their terms. The conversations that revolved solely around their world. The emotional support you provided that was never reciprocated. The evidence was always there, but you were too busy curating your presence to examine it. This awakening is the painful collapse of the narrative you've carefully constructed to justify the imbalance. You have been the architect of your own neglect, building elaborate excuses for their behavior because the alternative, accepting their simple, uncomplicated lack of regard, was too devastating to confront. You told yourself they were just busy, that they were bad at texting, that they showed they cared in other ways you had to constantly look for. You became a detective of your own demotion, searching for scraps of evidence to prove you mattered, all while ignoring the overwhelming proof that you didn't. The realization is the moment you finally put down the magnifying glass and see the entire barren landscape for what it is. It is the humiliation of recognizing that the one-way street you've been happily walking down was never a path to somewhere. It was just a long, lonely loop designed to keep you occupied while they lived their life. You see the currency of your attention, your time, your emotional labor, being treated as a free commodity, something they withdraw from without ever making a deposit. And the bank account of your spirit is now critically overdrawn. This personal epiphany is inextricably linked to a broader, more scathing social criticism. We live in a culture that prizes connection as a metric, follower counts, likes, response times, while systematically eroding the conditions for genuine depth. We have been sold a lie that more communication equals better communication, that constant accessibility is the pinnacle of intimacy. Our devices have become digital leashes, fostering an anxiety that if we are not immediately available, we are failing at being a good friend, partner, or employee. This creates a world of perpetual performers, all desperately broadcasting their lives for validation, yet feeling profoundly isolated behind the screens. Your one-sided relationship is merely a microcosm of this collective sickness. You are simply playing the game by the distorted rules you were given. Be available, be agreeable, be useful, and you will be loved. The moment of realization is the understanding that the game is rigged, that the promised reward of reciprocal respect is a phantom, and that you have been pouring the most authentic parts of yourself into a vessel with a hole in the bottom. The emotional texture of this moment is not pure anger. It is a complex alloy of grief, shame, and a strange, hollow relief. There is grief for the connection you thought you had, for the future you imagined, for the energy and love you bestowed that now feels wasted. There is a deep, cringing shame for having allowed it to happen, for silencing your own intuition for so long, for bargaining for crumbs when you deserved a feast. You feel foolish for not seeing it sooner, for believing your own generous fiction. Yet, intertwined with this pain is an undeniable thread of relief. The exhausting performance is over. The constant vigilance of monitoring their mood, the anxiety of waiting for a call, the mental gymnastics of excuse-making, that relentless labor can finally cease. The truth, however brutal, is easier to carry than the weight of a lie you have to constantly uphold. The facade collapses, and while the rubble is all around you, you are still standing in the open air, and for the first time in a long time, you can breathe. This pivotal moment forces a critical choice, a fork in the road of your own dignity. One path is well trodden. You can paper over the crack in your awareness, recommit to the performance with even more fervor, and try to win back the respect that was never truly offered. This is the path of fear, the fear of the void their absence would create, the terror of being alone with the self you have neglected. The other path is uncharted and terrifyingly quiet. It is the path of acceptance. It requires you to sit in the unsettling silence of the truth and to resist the primal urge to fix, to plead, to prove your worth once more. This is not a path of action toward them, but of inaction for yourself. It is the decision to stop initiating, to stop accommodating, to stop explaining, to let the silence you so feared become your new habitat. This choice is the first authentic act of self-love in a long time, and it is taken not from a place of strength, but from a place of utter exhaustion. You are not choosing yourself because you are suddenly full of confidence. You are choosing yourself because you have absolutely nothing left to give to anyone else. The aftermath of this realization is a period of profound disorientation. The habits of a lifetime are not undone in a day. The muscle memory of your thumb will still reach for your phone to send that good morning text. Your mind will still craft excuses for them out of pure conditioned habit. You will feel the pull of the old drama, the addictive cycle of hope and disappointment, and you will have to consciously, painfully, choose the quiet truth over the noisy familiar. This is the withdrawal phase from an addiction to validation. You are detoxing not from a person, but from the role you played in their story. You are learning who you are without the constant reference point of their approval or disapproval. It is lonely and awkward, like relearning how to walk. You are rediscovering your own rhythms, your own interests, your own voice that you softened for so long to avoid causing offense. You are meeting yourself again, not as a satellite orbiting someone else's planet, but as a universe unto yourself, vast and unexplored. This moment, therefore, is not an ending, but the most important beginning of your life. It is the death of the person you thought you had to be loved, and the birth of the person you are meant to become. The pain of the realization is not a punishment. It is the necessary friction that sandpapers away the inauthentic layers, revealing the solid core of your self-worth that was there all along. It is the catalyst for a journey inward, a journey that should have begun years ago but was delayed by the distracting noise of seeking external confirmation. The person who failed to see your value did not break you. They did you the unintended favor of holding up a mirror to a life that had become unbalanced. They showed you, through their absence of effort, exactly where you had been abandoning yourself. The gratitude you will eventually feel is not for them, but for the brutal, liberating truth they forced you to see. The relationship, in its failure, becomes your most impactful teacher, and the lesson is simple, yet life-altering. You were never the problem. Your problem was that you were offering a masterpiece to someone who could not see beyond the price of the frame. The awakening begins not with a grand gesture shouted from the rooftops, but with a quiet decision made in the deepest chambers of your own heart. It is the conscious, deliberate act of choosing silence over noise, stillness over chasing, and yourself over the phantom of a connection that only ever existed in your own hopeful imagination. This is not the absence of defeat, of slinking away with your tail between your legs. It is the absence of sovereignty, a reclaiming of your own territory. You are not running from them. You are walking towards yourself, and the path just happens to lead away from everything that drained you. This initial step feels less like power and more like withdrawal, a painful unclenching of a muscle that has been held taut for years. You are resisting the addictive pull to check, to explain, to seek closure, to have the last word. You are learning that the most powerful word is often the one never spoken, the message never sent, the door closed without a slam. This is the practice of presence in your own life, a redirecting of the energy you once poured outward into the vast, neglected interior of your own being. In the void left by their absence, a profound silence descends, and it is within this silence that the real work begins. At first, it is terrifying, this quiet. It echoes with the ghosts of old conversations and the anxiety of being forgotten. But if you can resist the urge to fill it, to numb it with distraction or another person, the silence slowly transforms from an enemy to your most sacred sanctuary. It becomes the blank canvas upon which you can finally paint your own thoughts, your own desires, your own uninterrupted essence. This silence is not empty. It is fertile ground. It is in this quiet that you begin to hear the faint, almost forgotten sound of your own voice. Not the one you use to perform for others, but the one that speaks your deepest truths. The constant static of seeking external validation fades, and you can finally tune into the frequency of your own intuition. This is where you remember what you like, what you value, what brings you peace without the filter of someone else's approval. The silence stops being something to endure and becomes something to cherish. A private library of the soul, where you can finally read the books of your own life. This journey inward is illuminated by a new kind of light, one that does not come from the spotlight of another's attention, but from a gentle, internal sun. It is the light of self-awareness, and it reveals everything without judgment. In this light, you see not only your strengths, but also the wounds that made you so willing to settle for so little. You see the patterns etched into your behavior, the scars from past hurts that never fully healed. But under this compassionate light, these scars are not ugly reminders of failure. They are proof of survival. They are the map of your journey, each line a story of what you have endured and overcome. They are no longer something to hide or be ashamed of. They are your armor, your evidence that you have been through the fire and have emerged, not unscathed, but undefeated. This light allows you to integrate every part of your story, the pain and the joy, the poor choices and the moments of grace, into a whole, complete human being. You stop trying to present a perfect, curated version of yourself to the world, and instead begin to embrace the powerful, complex, and authentic individual you truly are. Solitude. Once your greatest fear becomes your greatest teacher and your most cherished ally. It is in this chosen aloneness that you rebuild the relationship that matters most, the one with yourself. You take yourself out for coffee and learn to enjoy your own company. You wander through a museum or a park at your own pace, following your own curiosity without compromise. You cook yourself a beautiful meal simply because you deserve it. Uprising. Because this is not loneliness, it is intimacy with the self. It is the process of becoming your own best friend, your own confidant, your own source of comfort and validation. You learn to validate your own feelings, to celebrate your own successes, and to comfort yourself in moments of sadness. This self-sufficiency is the bedrock of unshakable self-worth. You are no longer a beggar at the banquet of others' attention. You become the host of your own feast, and you decide who is worthy of an invitation. This is the ultimate reclamation of power, realizing that you were the source of the love you were seeking from others all along. The absence you have created becomes a forge, and in its intense, focused heat, your sense of self-worth is tempered into something unbreakable. The need for external approval, once a screaming hunger, diminishes to a quiet whisper and then falls silent. Your value is no longer a question to be put to a committee of others. It is a fact you state to yourself every morning. You begin to make decisions based on what is truly best for you, not what you think will make you more lovable or acceptable. You set boundaries not as walls to keep people out, but as gates that define who you are, and you alone hold the key. This is not about becoming hardened or cold. It is about becoming solid, integrated, and whole. The energy you once spent on anxiety, parsing texts, and managing another person's emotions is now free to be channeled into your passions, your creativity, and your growth. You begin to attract different things into your life, not because you are trying to, but because your very vibration has changed. You are no longer a mirror reflecting the needs of others. You are a lighthouse, shining your own distinct light, and you naturally guide in those who can appreciate its beam. This awakening is a homecoming to a self you had abandoned long ago. It is a reconciliation with all the parts of you that you had to hide, minimize, or abandon to fit into someone else's cramped idea of who you should be. The person you become in the wake of this transformation is more authentic, more grounded, and more powerful than the person who first walked away. You realize that the power of absence was never about making someone else miss you. It was about giving yourself the space to miss yourself, to remember who you were before you got lost in the labyrinth of someone else's approval. The journey back to that core self is the most important pilgrimage you will ever undertake. It is a quiet revolution, fought not in the outside world with loud arguments and dramatic exits, but in the inner world, with gentle decisions and steadfast self-compassion. The victory is not their regret. The victory is your peace. The prize is not their renewed attention. The prize is the profound discovery that you are, and always have been, entirely enough. The journey we have walked does not end with a triumphant return or a dramatic reckoning. It culminates in a state of profound, unshakable peace that is born from the deepest kind of self-knowing. This is not a victory that requires an audience or demands external validation, for its very essence is internal and self-contained. The power you have discovered in absence is not a tool to be wielded against others to force a change in their behavior or to elicit a specific reaction. To use it in such a way would be to fall back into the very trap you just escaped. The exhausting performance for someone else's attention. The true awakening's understanding that their reaction is now irrelevant data. Whether they finally respect you, whether they miss you, whether they even notice your absence, is no longer a metric for your success. Your success is measured solely by the quality of the relationship you have forged with yourself, by the quiet certainty you feel upon waking that your worth is a fact, not a negotiation. This inner fortitude is your new home, a place built not on the shifting sands of others' opinions, but on the bedrock of your own accepted and cherished value. This transformation is the most authentic revolution possible, for it is waged and won within the silent, sacred borders of your own consciousness. Every external battle for respect, for recognition, for a place at the table, is ultimately a proxy war for this inner conflict. When you win the war within, the external skirmishes lose their stakes. The real revolution is the dethroning of the old belief that you need to be seen to be valuable, and the coronation of the truth that your value is inherent and self-evident. It is the quiet dismantling of a system that taught you your light was only valid if it was reflected back at you through the eyes of another. You have now become the source and the witness of your own brilliance. This is not an act of arrogance, but of alignment. You are no longer looking outward for a reflection. You are generating your own light, and in doing so you become a beacon not for everyone, but for those who recognize and respect its frequency. This inner shift changes everything about your outer world, not because the world itself has changed, but because the lens through which you view it has been permanently altered. The space you created by walking away, that initial void that felt so terrifying, has now become the most valuable real estate in your life. You have not simply left a blank spot, you have consciously curated what gets to occupy that space now. You have filled it with your own passions, your own curiosities, your own quiet contemplations, and the few genuine connections that merit your refined and precious energy. This is the ultimate act of curation, building an environment both internally and externally that reflects your true worth back at you. The people, habits, and thoughts you allow into this space must now earn their place. They must enhance the peace you have fought so hard to cultivate, not disrupt it. This is the practical application of your awakening, a life lived by design, not by default. It is a life where your time is treated as the non-renewable resource it is, and your energy is invested, not spent. You are no longer a passive participant in your own story, reacting to the whims of others. You are the author, the editor, and the critic, and you hold the pen with a steady, assured hand. Carry this quiet power with you into the world, not as a shield or a weapon, but as a subtle, radiant energy that informs your every choice and interaction. Let it be the reason you no longer engage in conversations that diminish you, the reason you walk away from dynamics that demand you shrink, the reason you can listen to criticism without being dismantled by it. This power is your new compass, its needle true north to your own integrity. It allows you to engage with the world from a place of abundance, not lack. You can now offer genuine kindness and connection because you have a surplus to give, not because you are desperate to receive something in return. Your interactions become purer, more authentic, because they are no longer transactions disguised as relationships. You can love more freely, not because you need to be loved back in a specific way, but because your capacity to love is an expression of your own wholeness. This is the paradox. By fully embracing your own absence from the wrong places, you become more potently present in the right ones. Therefore, understand that the final silent call to action is not about them at all. It never was. This was always a pilgrimage back to yourself. The most powerful statement you will ever make is written not in words shouted to convince others, but in the silent language of actions that honor you. It is found in the boundary you hold without apology, in the commitment you keep to your own peace, in the easy no spoken to what does not serve you, and the full-bodied yes given to what sets your soul alight. This is a lifelong practice, a daily recommitment to choosing the authenticity of your own solitude over the compromising noise of false connection. It is the courage to prioritize your inner resonance over outer applause. The goal is not to become an island, isolated and untouchable, but to become a sovereign nation unto yourself, open for trade and diplomatic relations with others, but possessing your own constitution, your own defenses, and your own inviolable borders. Now, go into your life. Wear this understanding not as a crown for others to see, but as a weightless, invisible mantle of sovereignty that only you can feel. Let it be the quiet confidence in your step, the calm assurance in your eye, the unwavering respect in the tone you use when you speak to yourself. The world may not applaud this quiet revolution, indeed it may not even notice it, but you will feel it in every fiber of your being. You will feel it in the deep, restful sleep that comes from no longer performing, in the calm mornings spent in your own fulfilling company, and in the profound sense of rightness that comes from living a life that is truly, entirely your own. The journey of absence culminates in the most profound presence imaginable, the full, uninterrupted presence of you, with yourself, for yourself. And that is the only validation that has ever truly mattered, and the only victory that is forever yours to keep.